Francis TV, everyone. We have a really beautiful ministry that we're going to discuss today. It's the Spiritual Direction Ministry that is available here for our parishioners as St. Francis. Before we delve into the conversation, though, I would love for our guests today to introduce themselves and maybe give us a little bit about who you are and how you're connected to this ministry.
Well, I'm Gladys Whitehouse. I've been in the parish now for 21 years, and so this is really home for me. I actually became a spiritual director shortly after moving here and getting involved in ministry and having a spiritual director myself.
I'm Phil Resnicki. I'm with the Holy Cross Catholic Church, and I live in the neighborhood, so I'm very accessible to St. Francis. I live across the street. And I've been a deacon for 36 years, and I went into training I was certified for spiritual direction in 2009, and I've been loving it, and we'll talk more about that later. So.
Beautiful. And finally?
Hi, I'm Nancy Jones, and I've been in the parish for a little over 3 years. I have been a spiritual director for about the same amount of time. I felt the call to do something more with God's people, and what better way than to spend time talking with people about God.
Beautiful. So the first thing that I think we should do is let's talk in detail about what spiritual direction is.
Well, the best way to explain spiritual direction is saying that it's a meeting between two people. It can be more. They frequently, small groups, get together for spiritual direction as well. But what it is during this meeting is the desire to listen to the movements of the Holy Spirit within the person who is seeking direction, and living out of what they hear during that time. Now, this is a process, and the relationship between the people takes time, so it doesn't happen overnight, but it is a beautiful way for us to learn how to become more attentive to the presence of God in our daily life. It isn't just attending to God during prayer. It's attending to the presence of God in everything that we do, in our relationships with our family members, with friends, with co-workers, in your work situations, and growing in that awareness in our lives.
And to that end, what is a spiritual director?
Well, a spiritual director is someone who has been trained in the ministry, but it really is an art. Spiritual direction is really an art. It is going to be a different relationship with each spiritual director and with each directee. So what the spiritual director does is to hold a space for the directee and the Holy Spirit. And we don't direct, we guide, we listen, we ask questions that help people to see where God has been present in their life and their relationships, like Gladys talked about, and just help us to grow in that relationship with God and in turn with others.
Wow. Can you share more about what spiritual direction is not?
Oh, it's definitely not counseling. It's not therapy. It's other things are like, it's not different from Stephen ministry. It's not psychotherapy. It's more companioning, being a friend, not really giving direction. It sounds very kind of autocratic. It actually is companioning and becoming a friend with each other. So it's accompanying them on their journey.
So I heard that it's not like the Stevens ministry. So if people are wondering like what some more of the differences might be between the Stevens ministry and the spiritual direction ministry, can you share a little more about that to make it clear?
Stephen Ministry is another beautiful ministry, and I was trained also in that ministry. And I would say the difference is that when a person comes to meet with a Stephen minister, it's usually the result of something that is going on in their lives. Perhaps it's a crisis of some sort. Maybe they're grieving over the loss of someone they love, or an illness that they are enduring. And the Stephen minister is trained to listen, to offer them guidance as well, to offer them resources that will help them as they move along. The difference is in a spiritual director will listen to their person that they are meeting with, but they're listening for the voice of God and for the movement of the Spirit within them. And that's a little technical difference between what Stephen ministry, how it differs from spiritual direction. It isn't that a directee comes without having a crisis. There can be something that they're going through. But as Phil said, it isn't counseling. It isn't, we're not directing them and trying to give them any advice. I don't know, would you like to add anything to that?
I think you said it beautifully, Gladys. Thank you.
It almost feels like you're nurturing the directee's opportunity to create this ongoing dialogue with God in ways that they haven't experienced or been aware of before. And every aspect of our life that could be applicable. You know, I heard at work, with family, with strangers. And, I mean, it feels like a beautiful opportunity to figure out how to talk with, make relationship with the Holy Spirit, to be aware of that. I am wondering, why is spiritual direction here at St. Francis at this time? You know, what brought it here? How did that happen?
Well, a number of years ago when the Franciscans were here, Steve Kluge was the one, actually, our friar, who thought it would be a wonderful idea to have it in the parish. And our deacon, Stephen Andrews, also. So they were the ones that came to me and said, why don't we look at what the possibility is for us to bring this to our parishioners. And it was the work of the Holy Spirit, because all of a sudden Nancy was here, I knew Phil through the secular Franciscans. And
was a director of mine for a while.
And then I met other people within the parish who are part of this team, who are not here today, but who had just moved into the parish as well and had been formed as spiritual directors. So we felt like the time was right. The Holy Spirit was moving in that direction.
I love that. And so, and it couldn't be more perfectly timed, you know, in the middle still of this pandemic in which we find ourselves. Talk to me a little bit about the deepening of spiritual growth and support that people will find as a result of being a part of this ministry.
Well, the spiritual director does offer support, listens to your prayer life, your time with God, how asks probing questions about how that might improve, might grow. I know that for me, I've had directees say that their time in spiritual direction, they can have a conversation that they cannot have anywhere else. And that's powerful, and that's moving to me. because I know that the Holy Spirit is between us and with us and surrounding us, and it's just a beautiful experience. I also have experienced people who want to grow beyond their own spirituality. They want to deepen. They want to have a more mature relationship with God. They want to have a more open relationship with God. They want to know where God is in their day, because sometimes their days don't go well. But in our conversation, we can find that even in the difficulties, God is still there.
I'd add that one of the things that some of us have been trained with is that when we begin a session, usually it's about an hour, we light a candle to remind us that there's a third person in the room. We certainly believe the Holy Spirit is present to us. You know, the session oftentimes starts with some prayer, ends with prayer too. But we make that there's three of us going, talking, and communicating with each other in the midst of a spiritual direction session.
There's something I want to, can I add?
Sure. I was going to ask it.
The other thing that we haven't really brought up is that frequently we want to know, we're trying to discern something in our lives. And we're seeking, what does God want me to do in this? Where is God calling me? And to be able to have that conversation with somebody else, a spiritual director, really helps in that discernment process. It's a way of talking through and making sure we've looked at all different aspects of that discernment.
Because what that makes me think about is the fact that we're really not in this alone. God is always here. God is always in conversation with us. And being reminded of that is empowering in so many ways. I can also see where the spiritual direction ministry would really help to support staff and our priests that are here. I can see where that would be incredibly helpful as an extension. I can see the ripple effect, I guess.
And there's also some ripple effect, if you will, Deb, with when people have been on retreat. To prepare yourself before you go on retreat is a wonderful thing to do with a spiritual director. It gives you an opportunity to speak what it is that you want, to tell God what you desire for your time away. And then after a retreat, it's really good to process your time with God. Perhaps you didn't feel anything in particular. You were waiting for a mountaintop moment and it didn't happen. But it could happen afterwards. And that's the beauty of spiritual direction, that you can unpack the good things and the things that are kind of neutral and find, oh, how wonderful. God was there. This is what God is saying to me. And it's a beautiful experience for me, I know.
I often say to people, God's timing is flawless. It is always perfect. So it may come at different times. One of the, how would someone go about finding a spiritual director?
Well,
Within
mechanism within the parish.
Yeah, within our parish,
Within the parish, there's going to be connections made, through Gladys. She's kind of our coordinator, and she connects us up with people as she visits with them. But outside the parish, you could find that out through other resources. There's networks that are around. For example, there's the Spiritual Directors International. They have a guide by which you can go. It's free. You look in there and you give them your preferences. Well, if you want a Catholic person or a Christian person, or it doesn't matter to you, you can go through their guidance, and they'll give you, the nearest people might be like a 20, 30-mile radius of you to connect with, and they'll give you the contact information.
Gladys, is the information about the ministry on our website?
It is. You can go to our website and you'll find spiritual direction right there. If you click on it, it'll bring you to our spiritual direction page. And it has some explanation about the ministry, but also an email where you can email and I will receive that message and then be in contact with you. And we start out with having a short conversation. And so I can get a sense of what it is that you're looking for and also see who is available within our team to be able to meet with you. We have bios that we send out of our team members, and then I ask you to pray about it, to have really to ask the Holy Spirit to guide you in that process. And then you are given the contact information to go ahead and contact the individual spiritual director.
Are there fees or any type of donations or anything that's a part of the ministry, or?
Yes, there are, and it isn't so much what we call a fee as a stipend. As a spiritual director, we each incur certain expenses, and so it's a way of having those expenses taken care of. Now, we never deny anyone spiritual direction because they are unable to provide a stipend. It's a sliding scale, and we asked again that you pray about it and tell us what you are comfortable giving. And again, sometimes people will make donations to a charitable organization, but the best thing to do is to have an open conversation with the spiritual director about that.
Beautiful. As a part of my research for this interview, Phil shared, and this is just an example of the ways in which a spiritual direction ministry might be profoundly impactful for someone.
Well, I had the blessing of one of the parishioners in St. Francis had a degenerative disease and started about 6 months ago. And I saw him once a month, the first couple of months, and then every 2 weeks, and then once a week in his last couple of months of living. And it was a beautiful journey for me. I learned a lot as far as accompanying someone who's going on, and definitely experiencing death as part of our lives. And, but I was blessed by it, and it was a great opportunity for me.
Is there anything further that anyone would like to share before we wrap up?
It's the seed of growth. It's wonderful. We don't tell them exactly what to do. We encourage them like into centering prayer or contemplative prayer, so they could develop their own prayer habits. They might ask, well, what do I do? But I gave them my examples. But I always say, you got to find what's comfortable for you, what you're at peace with it, what you're peace with. Something you're going to hold on to. You might get some suggestions on journaling. It's a wonderful way of connecting with God too. Some of our approaches are Ignatian or Franciscan or whatever. Gladys and I are professed secular Franciscans the last couple of years. So.
And I encourage my directees to pray as they can and not as they can't. So in other words, for them to explore different ways of praying, like Phil was saying, journaling, and there's just so many different ways of connecting with God through nature, through music, through art, through the beautiful old prayers of the church, Liturgy of the Hours, or in contemplation. I mean, there's just so many ways of relating with the Lord, and so I just encourage people to look for what works for them, so that they will continue, because God is always waiting to hear from us.
I love that.
And our spirituality, our spiritual life, is an ongoing one. It's a journey that we take for the rest of our life. And what we desire is to grow deeper and deeper in that relationship with God. So it's never ending.
So perhaps you're looking for a way to create a dialogue with God in ways you never have, or perhaps you're just trying to figure out how to hear God's voice in your life. I encourage anyone who might have these questions or others to reach out to Gladys Whitehouse. You can find information about the Spiritual Direction Ministry on our website. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, everyone.